Hi, I want us to start with complete silence. Imagine a sound that none of us wants to hear next to our bed. A piercing, monotonous, endless beep from a medical monitor. That's the sound of the boundary. In that second, a person's heart stops. Blood ceases to push oxygen through the veins. Doctors call it cardiac arrest. It's the moment when the biological clock halts. Within 10, at most 20 seconds after the last heartbeat, the electrical activity in the cerebral cortex drops to zero. A flat line on the encephalogram. From the perspective of modern academic science, at that moment, the lights go out inside the skull. There shouldn't be dreams, thoughts, pain, fear, or memories. Just darkness and entropy. Like a turned-off TV, the screen goes black, and the picture vanishes forever. But if that's the case, if brain death is just the end of an electrical circuit, then why do thousands of people, pulled back from the brink by doctors using defibrillators and adrenaline, all tell the same story? Why, when their TV was switched off, were they watching a movie more real than our everyday lives? I'm not a priest, not a medium. I'm a researcher and a skeptic. I'm used to trusting data, not legends. So, I decided to conduct an experiment that was impossible before. We live in the era of big data and artificial intelligence. We have tools that can spot patterns where the human eye sees only chaos. I took 5,000 detailed reports of near-death experiences. These are open data from international archives, the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, and the AINS database. Gigabytes of text, confessions from people of different ages, professions, and religions. From a housewife in Oklahoma to a neurosurgeon who ended up on the operating table himself. I loaded this massive dataset into an advanced language model artificial intelligence. My goal was cynical. I wanted to find errors. I wanted contradictions. I wanted to prove that it was all just the delirium of a dying mind. A chaotic jumble of images generated by a panicking brain. I gave the AI clear instructions. Analyze the semantics, find the structure, ignore religious terms, focus only on perceptual facts. I asked the AI, is there a universal death scenario that doesn't depend on culture? And what the algorithm output made me, a grown man, set aside my laptop and stare into space for a long time, because the data paints a picture that doesn't fit into biology textbooks. Today, we'll break it down piece by piece, step by step, without hysteria, without mysticism. Just facts, logic, and cold analysis of 5,000 deaths. This is an investigation into what awaits each of us. Let's start with the physics of the process. What is death for our body? It's a cascade of shutdowns. First, the heart blood pressure drops to zero. Brain cells, neurons, are the most voracious energy consumers in our body. They need oxygen and glucose continuously. As soon as supplies stop, neurons have a tiny reserve seconds. The ion pumps that maintain the cell's electrical charge halt. Chaos begins. The cell loses the ability to transmit signals. Outwardly, it looks like loss of consciousness. The person collapses, pupils dilate and stop reacting to light. This is clinical death. Doctors know they have about 5 minutes to restart the heart before the brain starts irreversible damage. It's in this short window between heart stoppage and resuscitation that science calls NDE, near-death experience, happens. Skeptics say it's just hallucinations. But let's think logically. What is a hallucination? It's a glitch, an error. If you give thousands of people LSD or plunge them into delirium tremens, each will see their own nightmare. One gets pink elephants, another geometric patterns, a third memories of forgetting to turn off the iron. Hallucinations are chaotic, individual. They depend on your past, your fears, what you ate for breakfast. But when I asked the AI to compare 5,000 death reports, it revealed a rigid, almost architectural pattern. In 60%, and in some samples up to 70% of cases, the scenario repeats with eerie precision. This isn't chaos. It's a strict sequence of events. The AI identified 4 key stages that people go through, regardless of where they live. Stage 1, the sensation of separation. The person suddenly realizes there's no more pain. Just moments ago, there was agony. A crushed chest in a car crash, a heart attack tearing the heart apart, and then click, absolute lightness, silence. Patients often describe it as, I just stepped out of a suit that was pinching me. Stage 2, view from above. Autoscopy. The person sees their own body. They see the doctors. They see the commotion. They see the nurse cutting their clothes. But they're not seeing it through their eyes. They're watching from the ceiling, from the corner of the room. And what's most astonishing, as the AI noted in the text sentiment analysis, is complete calm. The person looks at their dead body with curiosity, but without horror, like a spectator in a theater. Stage 3, transition. That famous tunnel. Though the AI points out that not everyone uses the word tunnel. Some say pipe, valley, funnel in the darkness. But the physics is the same, moving at enormous speed through dark space toward a point of light. And finally, stage 4, the light. This isn't just a spotlight bulb. Almost every report describes this light as a living entity, an intelligence. Light that knows everything, light that loves. And here we come to the first major mystery, the first twist in our plot. The mystery of universality. Skeptics often say, oh, it's just cultural coding. You've seen movies about tunnels? You've read books. So your dying brain serves up a familiar picture to calm you. Sounds very logical, right? Expectations shape reality. I decided to test this hypothesis with the AI. I tasked the neural network, compare descriptions of the light entity from a Christian in Texas, a Hindu in Delhi, and a convinced atheist in Berlin. Find differences in the plot. And you know what the algorithm replied? No differences in the plot, only in the labels. The Christian says, I saw Christ. The Hindu might say, I saw Yama or an angel. The atheist says, I met a clot of pure energy and infinite intelligence. But when the AI strips away religious terms, undressing the text to its essence, it turns out they're describing the same being. It doesn't judge, it has a sense of humor, it communicates telepathically, transmitting massive amounts of information instantly, and it radiates what people call unconditional love. And the strongest argument against the cultural code theory came from analyzing children's reports. The database includes cases of clinical death in children under 5. Little kids, they haven't watched Hollywood dramas yet, haven't read Moody. They barely know what death is. For them, death is when a bird doesn't fly anymore, but they see the same thing. A child might say, I flew through a slide pipe, or I got into a tree hollow where it was bright. The metaphors are childish, but the structure of the experience is adult. Out of body, light, encounter. If this is cultural programming, where does a 3-year-old get it from? If it's a hallucination, why is it the same for everyone? Why does our brain, this most complex biological computer, launch the same farewell program before burning out? And most importantly, why? Think about evolution. Evolution is pragmatic and economical. It needs species survival. If an antelope dies in a lion's jaws or an ancient human falls off a cliff, what's the point of wasting precious remaining brain energy to show the dying a beautiful 4K movie with stereo sound? If you're dying, you're out of the game. Spending resources on your comfort is biologically pointless. It would make more sense to just flip the switch. Darkness, end. But instead of darkness, the brain, or whatever lives in it, explodes with incredible activity and clarity. Clarity that, according to survivors, is more real than anything on Earth. This is a paradox that's haunted scientists for 50 years. But I promise to be objective. I promise not to slide into blind faith. Science has its answers to these questions, and they sound very convincing, harsh, materialistic. Scientists say, don't fool yourself, it's not the soul, it's chemistry. And we must listen to this version because if we want truth, we have to try to dismantle the miracle first. Let's hear the advocates of materialism. What happens in a neurobiologist's lab when they hear about the light at the end of the tunnel? They smile and pull out a neurotransmitter chart. So, the prosecution's version, no soul exists. Your mystical experience is just a system bug. The last flash of a fading computer. This is strict materialism's position. And, to be fair, it has strong arguments. When the heart stops, the brain panics. Imagine a submarine that's taken a hit and is sinking. Life support systems shut down one by one. Emergency lights flash red. The crew runs in terror through compartments. The captain, our brain, tries to save remnants of consciousness, jettisoning everything unnecessary. Argument 1, the most popular among skeptics: hypoxia, oxygen deprivation. Any fighter pilot or high-altitude climber knows this effect. When the brain lacks air, the visual cortex suffers first. Peripheral vision shuts off, the image darkens at the edges. Only a bright spot in the center remains. There you have it, a physiological explanation for the tunnel with light at the end. No gates to paradise, just the optic nerve failing due to dropping pressure. Sounds like the perfect explanation, right? It closes the tunnel question forever. I decided to check it. I asked the AI to match medical reports of acute hypoxia symptoms with the near-death experience database and find similarities and differences in cognitive functions during oxygen starvation and clinical death. And here's where the neat theory starts to wobble. Yes, the visual tunnel effect matches, but there's a giant but that the algorithm noted. Hypoxia causes confusion. In medicine, it's called delirium. The person becomes incoherent. They forget who they are. They can't add 2 plus 2. Their speech is rambling. It's like severe intoxication or raving. Now look at reports from people who came back. They describe a state of hyperreality. They say, "I thought clearer than ever in my life. My mind was sharp as a scalpel. I remembered everything in the tiniest details." The AI conducted semantic analysis of the texts and delivered an unambiguous verdict. The structure of speech in clinical death descriptions is far more complex, logical, and consistent than in accounts of hypoxia survivors. Hypoxia is the ramblings of a drunken sailor. Near-death experience is a clear scout's report. These are two different brain states. Argument 2, chemical storm. Skeptics say, okay, it's not just oxygen, it's drugs. In mortal danger, our body acts like a looted pharmacy. To protect from shock pain, the brain dumps horse doses of endorphins into the blood. These are natural opiates. They cause bliss, peace, and detachment. Plus, there's the popular DMT hypothesis, dimethyltryptamine. It's a powerful psychedelic that some scientists believe can be produced by our pineal gland, a tiny organ in the brain center. The theory goes, at death, the pineal gland dumps its entire DMT stock, and the dying person just catches the most intense high of their life. This explains everything. Out-of-body entity encounters universal love. I turned to the data again. I didn't argue with biochemists. I did what AI does best, compared patterns. I loaded hundreds of trip reports, descriptions of hallucinations from people on DMT and ketamine, and asked to compare them with the clinical death database and find differences in plots. This was perhaps the most fascinating stage of the experiment because the AI found a fundamental difference. A narcotic trip is chaos. Fractals, dancing gnomes, distorted space geometry, melting walls. Hallucinations are often scary, aggressive, and utterly meaningless. No plot. A chair turns into a dog, the dog into a cloud. Near-death experience is structure, narrative. It has a beginning, development, and end. No geometry glitches. People see themselves, their hands, deceased relatives who look completely normal. The AI highlighted a parameter, image stability. In narcotic delirium, images are unstable. In clinical death, grandma stays grandma. She doesn't turn into a purple triangle. And the main difference is the life review, which we'll discuss later. Neither ketamine nor DMT makes a person relive their life, evaluating actions morally. Chemistry can provide pictures, but not moral lessons. There's another phenomenon medicine records but desperately tries to ignore because it shatters the entire materialistic worldview. Terminal lucidity. Imagine a patient with severe Alzheimer's or dementia. Their brain is physically destroyed. Where neural connections should be, there's emptiness and amyloid plaques. Brain tissue atrophied. This person hasn't recognized their children for years. Couldn't string 2 words together. Forgot how to hold a spoon. For doctors and relatives, their personality is erased. Only the body remains. And suddenly, hours or minutes before death, something incredible happens. The person snaps into crystal clear consciousness. They recognize family, call them by name, recall important dates. They speak meaningfully, deeply, calmly. They say goodbye, then die. I found dozens of such cases in medical archives, confirmed by doctors. Wait, if consciousness is just a product of neurons, as materialism claims, how is this possible? If you smash a hard drive with a hammer, you can't suddenly boot Windows from it. If the hardware's broken, the software doesn't run. But in terminal lucidity, we see a computer smashed to bits suddenly working perfectly for 5 minutes. Where does this signal come from? How can a brain turned to mush generate complex speech and memory? Materialism tells us. The brain produces consciousness like the liver produces bile. No liver, no bile. But terminal lucidity suggests another hypothesis. A hypothesis that scares scientists with its unscientific nature, but can't be ignored. What if the brain isn't the generator? What if the brain is just a receiver, an antenna? Consciousness exists outside the brain like a radio wave outside the radio. Disease breaks the receiver, the sound gets scratchy. Fades, we hear only noise. But the station keeps broadcasting. And before the receiver burns out completely, in some final moment resistance drops, and the signal comes through clean. It's a beautiful theory, but sadly just a theory. Everything we've discussed so far, tunnels, grandma meetings, even sudden mental clarity, is subjective experience. A skeptic can always say, "It seemed that way. It's all mind games." Subjective experience is a poor witness in court. You can't pin it down. We need evidence, ironclad, irrefutable. Facts checkable by clocks, protocols, and surveillance cameras. And the scariest part for skeptics is that such facts exist. There are cases where people didn't just see light and feel love. They hovered under the resuscitation room ceiling and saw what was happening while their body was dead. They saw things they physically couldn't from the operating table. They recounted doctors' conversations word for word. They described tools the nurse pulled from a cabinet behind them. This is called veridical perception. And this is where mysticism ends and detective work begins. Because explaining this with chemistry or hypoxia is impossible. I found reports from the AWARE project, and what's written there makes your hair stand on end. Ready to learn what dead patients saw while doctors filled out death certificates? We're approaching the midpoint of our investigation and its most dangerous part. Up to now, a skeptic could lounge in their chair with a condescending smile. Tunnels? Hypoxia. Light? Endorphins. Meeting relatives? Psychological defense. All explainable by brain function even if stretched. But now we cross the line where materialistic explanations crumble to dust. We'll talk facts, not sensations or emotions, hard, documented facts in medical records. In near-death experience science, there's a term that gives any conservative neurobiologist a nervous tick. Veridical perception. Verifiable perception. This is when a person in clinical death with stopped heart and shut-off brain sees and hears real events. Events in the operating room, corridor, or even outside. And most importantly, after resuscitation, they recount these events with pinpoint accuracy. This is the second twist in our script. Adult criteria for truth. If I tell you I flew to Mars in a dream, you can't verify it. But if I say while unconscious, I saw you put a green pen in your left pocket and drop a coin under the table, and the coin is really there, we have a problem. I asked the AI to filter the 5,000 report database for verifiable events. I sought cases where the patient's words were confirmed by medical staff. The AI gave me hundreds of matches. Let's dissect the loudest ones. They sound like detective stories, but they're medical chronicles. Case 1, the man with the dentures. This happened in a Dutch clinic, documented by cardiologist Pim van Lommel. They bring in a 44-year-old man. Massive heart attack. He's already blue. Heart not beating, no breathing. Doctors start intubation, inserting a tube into the throat for a ventilator. The nurse notices the patient's upper dentures. He removes them so they don't interfere with the tube, and in the rush, places them on the pull-out tray of the medication cart under a pile of bandages and vials. Resuscitation lasts a long time, 1.5 hours of struggle. Electric shocks, chest compressions. They restart the heart. The patient, still comatose, is wheeled to intensive care. He wakes up only a week later, and here's the moment of truth. That same nurse enters the room to check meds. The patient sees him and says, "Oh, you know where my teeth are?" The nurse is shocked. He's sure the patient can't remember him. During resuscitation, the man was in deep clinical death. The patient continues, "Yes, you were there. You took out my teeth and put them on that cart with bottles. Bottom pull-out drawer." The nurse finds the dentures exactly there. I loaded this case into the AI and asked to analyze the probability of random guessing. What's the chance the patient guessed the specific nurse's action and exact item location? The AI's answer: probability approaches statistical error. The patient couldn't physically see this. His eyes were closed. He was unconscious. Moreover, he described the situation from above. He saw his own bald spot, the doctor's frenzy around his body. Skeptics say, maybe he heard? Hearing shuts off last. Okay, suppose. But can you hear which drawer the dentures went into? Can you hear what the nurse looks like, whom you've never seen before? Case 2. The blue tennis shoe. This is a classic described by Kimberly Clark Sharp, patient Maria. Heart stoppage. After resuscitation, she claims her consciousness flew out of her body, out of the room, and hovered outside the hospital building at third-floor level. She told the doctor she saw a forgotten tennis shoe on the window ledge, old, worn, dark blue, and added a detail. It had a worn spot at the little toe, and the lace was tucked under the heel. The doctor, out of curiosity, went to check. He circled the building, found the window. There was indeed a shoe on the ledge. But the scariest part, you could only see the wear at the little toe and tucked lace from a position hovering in the air outside the window, not visible from the room or ground. I asked the AI, could this be false memory, cryptomnesia? Maybe she saw the shoe before? Analysis shows Maria was admitted at night by ambulance in critical condition. She physically couldn't have been strolling third-floor ledges. How to explain this from brain chemistry? No way. Hallucinations happen inside the head. If you see a pink elephant, it's not in the room. But if you see a real shoe on a real ledge, it's not hallucination, it's observation. And this observation was made by a point of consciousness meters from the body. To settle the mysticism versus fact debate, scientists launched the AWARE project, the largest scientific study of clinical death in history, led by Dr. Sam Parnia, a world-renowned resuscitator. The idea was brilliantly simple. If people really leave their bodies and float under ceilings, let's test it. In resuscitation rooms of 25 hospitals in the US and Europe, they installed special shelves right under the ceiling. On these shelves, they placed pictures, images visible only from above, not from the bed below. Doctors didn't see them either. Logic. If you claim your soul floated under the ceiling, tell us what's drawn on the picture. I analyzed this study's results, and here I must be honest. Results are ambiguous. No patient who returned from the other side in this specific study named a picture. Skeptics rejoiced. Aha, caught you, no out-of-body, all fantasies. But Dr. Parnia didn't rush conclusions because of a sampling issue. Most patients died in rooms without pictures or in corridors or ER. Those who died in the right rooms often returned with severe memory damage and remembered nothing. However, the AWARE project recorded something else. It captured cases where patients accurately described resuscitators' action sequences. Defibrillator sounds, doctor's commands, charge 200, clear. But the most interesting is timing. And here we approach the main paradox that breaks materialism harder than the blue shoe. The time paradox. See, doctors know exactly when the brain shuts off. 20 seconds after heart stoppage, the encephalogram flattens. Isoelectric line, no electricity. Hard drive off, no recording. But patients recount events from 2 to 5 minutes after heart stoppage. They describe procedures done during flat EEG. I asked the AI, how is memory formation physically possible during isoelectric cortical silence? The AI's answer was short and terrifying for any physiologist. According to modern neurobiology models, impossible. Memory needs synapses, electrical impulses. No impulses, no memory. It's like trying to record video on a camera with the battery removed. but the video is recorded and stored in the returned person's consciousness. This leads to a conclusion academics fear but which suggests itself. Consciousness isn't produced by the brain. Consciousness doesn't sit inside neurons. It uses the brain, like a driver uses a car. If the car stalls, the driver doesn't vanish, he just gets out. He keeps seeing, hearing, thinking, and judging by thousands of reports I've read. Outside the car, it's even better. He sees the world clearer, understands more. But there's another aspect that struck me. The AI, in 5,000 reports, highlighted one feature of veridical perception rarely discussed. It's not just visual info. People don't just see doctors from above. They often feel doctors' emotions. In one report, a woman described how a young doctor trying to save her was panicking. She didn't see his face, but felt his fear, his desire not to screw up his first shift. She felt his thoughts. Later, when she came to and told him, he cried because it was true. This isn't just sight, it's empathic telepathy. And it happens when the brain is dead. We have evidence on the table. Dentures, blue shoe, confirmed conversations, memory formed in flat encephalogram silence. Can we brush this off as coincidence? Once random, twice coincidence, but 5,000 reports is statistics. And this statistic screams that death isn't the end. It's an exit. But to where? And why are we sent back? Why do those who've seen that light, felt that incredible love, have to return to their sick, broken bodies? And why does this experience change them forever? We're approaching the finale, the answer to what this all means for us, the living. We've gone through denial, scientific analysis, and collision with inexplicable facts. We dissected the physics of dying. We saw how brain chemistry tries to explain the light, but shatters on dentures in a table drawer. But in this 5,000 report array, there's a chapter skeptics hate most because it's not about physics, it's about conscience. The life review phenomenon. The AI, analyzing narrative structure, highlighted this stage as the emotional peak of the entire experience. It's not just life flashed before my eyes, like in cheap movies. Not a chronological event montage. Born, married, died. It's total holographic reliving of every moment, but from a very strange angle. People describe it as, I was simultaneously myself and the people I interacted with. If you hit someone in 5th grade, you don't just see the punch, you feel the pain in your fist, but also the humiliation and physical pain of the one hit. You feel the consequences for their psyche years ahead. I asked the AI, what's the dominant emotion in the life review? The machine's answer was surprising. No external judge. No bearded God pointing a finger and sending to hell. The judge is you. And this judgment is far scarier than any tribunal because you can't justify, can't lie. All masks off. You feel every hurt you caused the world and every joy you gave. It's the boomerang principle absolute. Skeptics say it's just the brain shuffling memory files. But why would a dying brain, whose task is to shut down, run such a complex moral ethical program? Why would evolution make us feel others' pain before death? No biological benefit. This doesn't look like fading. It looks like a lesson. And this lesson changes people forever. Here I want to pause. We're doing huge work, sifting thousands of scientific report pages to give you concentrated truth. If you like this deep, adult approach to reality's mysteries, support the channel with a subscription and like right now. It helps algorithms see that such complex topics are needed. Thanks. Moving on. We're approaching the third psychological twist in our script. The return. It seems the person survived. Doctors performed a miracle, relatives are happy. But the returnee often falls into deep depression. The AI noted a sharp contrast in emotional tone between descriptions of the other side and this world. Their home, brightness, love, understanding, lightness. Here, heavy sick body, gray colors, gravity, misunderstanding, and social games that now seem pointless. People say, it's like returning from a colorful world to black and white. But with this longing comes a fundamental personality shift. Psychologists call it post-traumatic growth, but the scale is abnormal. I asked the AI to analyze value changes after NDE. Result: 90% of surveyed lose fear of death entirely, not braver but simply stop seeing death as end. For them, it's just shedding a coat. Interest in material things drops. Money, career, status. All seems like silly sandbox play. Altruism and desire to help others surges. Remember the life review. They felt on their skin that the only thing that matters there is how much love you gave here. This can't be faked, can't be simulated. It's a full personality reboot in 5 minutes of clinical death. So where have we arrived? We have a basket of versions. Let's dump it on the table and see what's left in the dry residue. Version A. Super hallucination. Stressed brain stages a complex spectacle to calm consciousness. Pros. Explains tunnel, hypoxia, and euphoria, endorphins. Cons. Shatters on veridical perception facts, blue shoe, dentures, and terminal lucidity in dementia patients. Chemistry can't see through walls. Version B. Quantum consciousness. Hypothesis supported by scientists like Sir Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff. Brain isn't consciousness producer, it's a quantum computer receiver. Soul is information recorded at Planck scale in neuron microtubules. When body dies, quantum information doesn't vanish. Information can't be destroyed by physics laws. It just returns to the common network, the cloud. This version explains everything. Why experience is universal, why consciousness sees from above, non-locality, why it persists with brain off. From logic and data the AI gave me, this version looks most probable. What conclusion can we draw? An adult, sober one. I stared at this data for days, and I realized one thing. It doesn't matter what you call it, heaven, nirvana, quantum field, dimension X. What's important? Death isn't shut down. It's transition. A change in consciousness's state of matter. And judging by thousands of reports, this transition isn't scary. What's scary is living a life so that in the life review, you're pained by your actions. Scary to waste time on hate, knowing we're all connected in one network. Researching these 5,000 deaths paradoxically taught me about life. It showed there's no chaos, there's structure, meaning, and responsibility. Perhaps clinical death is just a keyhole we peek through to stop fearing and start living truly. Live as if your life review is happening right now because, in essence, it is. Write in the comments. Have you or your loved ones had a similar experience? What did you see? These stories are more important than any statistics. I read every comment. Subscribe if you want to keep dissecting how the world works without rose-tinted glasses or blindfolds. I'm the thinker. See you.